Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is wonderful to see such a crowd here in the auditorium on a Saturday morning. I don't think I have seen the auditorium this full since our Edvard Munch exhibition. And I think it's proof, Abe, that Abe, your joy beats Norwegian angst any day. So welcome to all of you. A very warm welcome from me and my colleagues at the Clark. I'm Ann Leonard. I'm the Manton curator, prints, drawings, and photographs here. And I had the great pleasure of curating the exhibition of Abe's work that just opened today, Abelardo Morell, in the company of Monet and Constable. And let me tell you that it was just a wonderful time. It was a collaborative process, and I immensely enjoyed it, as you will enjoy the exhibition of work just around the corner. So I would like to first acknowledge the support of the True Family Foundation for this exhibition, and also to recognize and with appreciation all the support of the Hout Gallery in New York. Abe's Gallery, Edwin and Veronica are here with us today, and thank you so much for your help, but thanks especially to the artist himself. I'm not gonna take a lot of time because I know we all wanna hear from him. There's maybe a few people in this room who don't know Abe, and for those people, I will do a quick introduction. So Abelardo Morell was born in Havana, Cuba in 1948 and immigrated to the US with his parents in 1962. He earned his undergraduate degree from Bowdoin College and his MFA from the Yale University School of Art. He has received honorary degrees from Bowdoin College and Lesley University, and he was professor of photography at the Massachusetts College of Art and Design in Boston for nearly 3 decades, 1983 to 2010. Abe's publications include a photographic illustration of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland from 1998, A Camera in a Room, 1995, A Book of Books, 2002, Camera Obscura, 2004, and Abelardo Morell, 2005. More recent publications are The Universe Next Door, I love that title, from 2013, Tent Camera from 2018, and Flowers for Lisa, also from 2018. Abe has received numerous awards and grants, among them a Guggenheim Fellowship in 1994 and an International Center of Photography Infinity Award in Art in 2011. In 2017, he received a Lucy Award for Achievement in Fine Art. His work has been collected and shown widely, including, this is a long list, at the Museum of Modern Art, the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Art Institute of Chicago, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and several other museums in the United States and abroad, to which list, of course, we are proud to add the Clark Art Institute today. A retrospective of his work organized jointly by the Art Institute of Chicago, the J. Paul Getty Museum, and the High Museum of Art closed in May 2014 after a year of travel. With that, it's always a great thing to hear Abe talk about his work. I know we're all in for a big treat, so please join me in welcoming Abe to the podium.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, it works? Okay, good. Thank you, Anne. And thank you for coming. It's not the most gorgeous day in the world, but it's nice to be liked. Before I start, I wanted to acknowledge, and I did earlier on, but a lot of new people have not heard this, that the music in the background at the gallery where my work was played by Ann Leonard. She's a distinguished pianist. I think that she wanted to be doing concert halls in Carnegie Hall and stuff like that. She chose something else. But I asked her to record a piece by John Cage. He's not the typical person you think, oh, lovely music. No, in fact, it's the opposite. But he wrote a piece in 1948 inspired by Eric Satie, who he loved. So the composition is called In the Landscape. And I thought the confluence of Eric Satie, John Cage, In the Landscape, with pictures that have to do with landscape. Also, he wrote the piece in 1948, the year I was born. So there's numerology involved in some ways. You know. Anyway, I thank Anne for not only being a really smart curator who knew exactly what to do with my work, and the show shows that. There's an elegance, minimalism involved, but also a lot of things coming out of the picture. So beautifully orchestrated, and I'm grateful to her. I'm grateful to Olivier, the director, and to the Clark for taking on the show. This is a world-class museum, and I feel indebted to it. So, and thank you for coming. So maybe lights off. I don't want lights on my face. I would like as much darkness as possible. I'm not the devil either. So any way to get these lights down? I just don't want to. I don't know who wrote. Any lights off? I'm sounding like Trump here. Where's the mic? No, I really do not want to be lit, because the point is here, not here. Okay. Thank you. I don't know who, I think, choreographer, Russian choreographer, wrote something that I like a lot. It says, love the art in you, not you in the art. And that's, I really love that idea that this is who I am, hopefully. So, okay. So as a young man too, so this is my passport in 1962, and a little bit of biography just to maybe set the scene. My parents and I left in 1962 as exiles from Cuba, ended up in New York City. I suspect that event, plus the couple of years first here, made me an artist. This is what I left light, discover a brownie in New York City, and I started making pictures like this where we lived. This is a basement apartment in New York City. No light coming in except for two slivers looking at the street. So that idea of lightness and then darkness, as bleak as it may sound, actually we were quite happy to have left a tyranny where we could be free. But the light situation really shifted dramatically. And I think that it had an impact on me. Obviously, well, how could it not? But I think it translated into some artistic currency down the line. I didn't know it at the time. This is my high school picture. I got accepted to Bowdoin in 1967, and I had no business at Bowdoin because I was not academically prepared in much of the subjects, and I think Bowdoin was taking a chance on me. So I studied photography at Bowdoin, and so this is high school. I took photography. I read people like Cage and crazy people, and this is what happened. I don't know. I just suddenly I woke up and I was a whole different animal. Which is really, I did become an artist in that process of coming to a country, a certain dark beginning, a certain point where I discovered the medium that really was suited me, which was photography. Before, I was not so good in academically, but with pictures, I knew what was happening. I had the complete syntax of images. I knew what worked and what didn't. So it became a way of talking. And, you know, so this is early work. Yeah, the crazier the better. That was my approach. You know, very uptight kid, suddenly discovering, and by the way, drugs didn't play a part in it. I was not those guys. Art did play a part in my transformation as an artist. So these early pictures really were a product of that rebellion or whatever. Much later, by the way, I'm only speaking about a very narrow subject, a narrow group of pictures today because I'm a maniac, I'm manic, and I've made lots of work. And we could be here for hours, and I don't want that. So this is going to be concentrating on things like this, the optical sense of life, how my glasses became a subject, and then camera obscura, which I'm sure all of you who have PhDs now know what that is, but essentially it's an ancient phenomenon that was exploited by artists very long time. And the essence of it, for the two people who don't know what a camera obscura is, a dark space, a dark room with an opening looking out will bring the event of the outside into the room. It's as simple as that. But it's still a kind of a mystery. And in fact, this idea happens naturally when there's a solar eclipse, when branches and leaves come together making small openings. It serves just like this camera obscura idea. An eclipse passes through those openings and then it gets narrated on the ground. So it's an ancient primitive thing. In college, teaching college, in 1983, 84, 85, I wanted my students to be, you know, alerted to exciting things. So I turned my classrooms into camera obscuras. And it was really kind of amazing to see very jaded and too cool for themselves students and whatever, do me, you know. Turning a classroom into what we were seeing, Huntington Avenue, upside down on the wall. And I knew I was onto something because these were jaded, hip students, and most of them would say, "Oh my God!" It was so that sense of this primitive technology still affecting people helped me. So I began to make pictures in 1991 involving that process. A small hole looking across to our neighbors, making a picture inside the living room that took 8 hours. But what we're seeing is the very effect of a camera obscura life. You know, Brady, Lisa, and I were inside looking at our neighbors go to work. You know, how interesting. I love doing photography that way. It wasn't the typical, oh, let's talk about f-stops. You know, not the boring stuff. I really wanted to do something new, and these are pictures I made around that time in New York. Empire State Building, without any sexual connotation here, obviously. Nothing. I'm sure that PhDs will go crazy on this picture. The flaccid building on the These pictures are they took a long time. It took about 8 hours to make, but it was fun. I felt like the inventor of photography making these pictures. Later on, with color and digital technology, I did further work, Times Square, Salute in Venice. Eventually, from a hole, I did research on lenses that I could have ground that would focus from the window onto the wall with the right distance. So images became a lot clearer. Still long exposure, 5 hours, but the realism became rather intense. This is in Venice as well. This is the Grand Canal inside. A Colombian woman who had a very nice palazzo, but she decided to cover it in the theme of Colombian jungles. I mean, who needs surrealism, right? This is in Florence, inside a very large office. So this melding of events, naturally, by the way. It's not like I'm doing some Photoshop thing where I'm saying, give me something weird. We're in that room, darkened with black plastic. I have a lens, and voila, it just, people walking and stuff happened. So these are some of the camera obscura later experiments. This is probably the last one I've made. Sunrise in Manhattan from Jersey City. I think, I don't know when I decided that I would try to go to France, but one of the things I wanted to do was to follow Monet and his paintings. This is a Rouen Cathedral painting. There are about 30 of them, altogether 35. He painted a lot. And of course, Marxist critics, their approach would be, oh, no wonder he made a lot because it was more money. No, fuck that. He loved what he was looking at, as I love what I'm looking at. So reasons for doing art are rarely about money. It's more about how can I push this thing into another version of itself. Anyway, this one belongs to the MFA in Boston. And this one belongs here, around the corner. It's quite a nice thing to know. So the idea for Monet making this kind of work was, he wanted to see how the cathedral looked at different times of the day. It's simple as that. And I don't know what time of the day this is, but I decided I would attempt something like it. So I found a room, an empty room. In fact, my assistants and I kind of broke into it. It was unofficially, we entered it unofficially, and someone said, oh, there's nobody living there, so whatever, So we made camera obscura pictures facing the cathedral. Just like Monet had done before, having several canvases waiting for 3 o'clock and 5 a.m. or whatever. So this is a morning picture, midday, and late afternoon. It was my attempt to try to not copy Monet, but sort of copy the spirit and the energy of inventions like this. And it was really fun. I mean, when I was making this picture, there was an accordion player in the plaza. And the whole thing had this weird soundtrack of, we were like watching people walking in the cathedral, and it really was very like a dream. So this is the 3 of them. I'm not doing 35 like Monet. I'm not sure that they would let me in that abandoned place anyway. I also made a tent camera picture, which is what the show here has. And it was just briefly, it's a device that over the years, I've perfected. And it involves a tent of a kind. It's improved over the years, but the tent darkens the ground. Out of the tent, some kind of periscope exists, like a submarine's periscope looking at a landscape, which it throws down onto the ground. Then I have a camera photographing that melding of the projection and the ground. In this case, the stone of the walkways with the Rouen itself. Liechtenstein had the same idea. I mean, just to prove that artists love images. And no PhD will say, well, I don't think that's allowed. You know, we do whatever the hell we need to do in order to get inspired. And that was very important that Liechtenstein had his version of Rouen. And I could go on and on and on. I could have Las Meninas by Velázquez, and then Picasso's version of that. The whole enterprise of art, which I know it saved me. It gave me a certain hope for life, because it was, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I will do, and then something said, but you can look at the world in an interesting way. And that in itself solves a certain kind of direction. This is an early tent camera. It's quite clumsy and awkward and hot inside. So this is the first attempts. And it had that kind of device that I talked about, the periscope, looking at the landscape. I had a camera inside the tent, photographing the ground. And of course, the tent is like 140 degrees in the desert, you know. So my assistant, speaking of my assistants, Max Labelle, the show that you see there, it's 50% me, it's 50% Max. Max, true. It's true. It's good to be with young people, not just to find out what the latest hits are, but Max is his own a good artist on his own, but he solved a lot of the technical issues, and he comes with me. He came with me to the pictures you see in the show. So that important to be grateful for new set of eyes, young eyes. So this is in Maine, northern Maine, with dead grass on the ground. So this is the result. The dead grass and the projection create something else. It's not one, it's not two, it's a three. Something new happens. And I was very excited about that, because it began to approach the realm of painting. Not fake paintings, but a painterly effect. I went there too, like everybody did. I got access to it. A lot of people back then thought, really, you could camp here? Well, I know somebody, you know. But it was weird to go to national parks, because I'm, you know, Cuban born, had not been to these places. My knowledge of the West was, you know, John Wayne and cowboy films. I mean, so the West was a little bit like this fictional landscape to me. Being there changed my mind. What you think is a desert is full of wonderful stuff. I mean, I learned about American landscape by going to them. So, but the picture that came from there is that, which felt to me like I was onto something, because there are a billion pictures of that geyser going off. I'm not sure there are that many pictures like look like this. So it's always finding a way of approaching something that's been done before. I think that's the history of usually art and mechanics, things like that. I've always loved Constable's paintings, just because of the sense of the weather and what's happening, and he really was a scientist of a kind. He really took copious notes about the change in weather and clouds and what kind of activity was happening. He was quite precise about it. In fact, this museum owns several amazing Constable paintings that are just outside the hall here. I loved also his paintings. I love a lot of British painting, but specifically Constable, because to me it felt like the way he painted was to take his brush and dip it on the ground and mud and dirt, and he painted from that. There's a sense of earthiness in his paintings that I love. Hampstead Heath, a place that he painted a lot in, and this is my pictures of them. By the way, I didn't want to make a replica of any of his paintings. I mean, it would be silly to try to imitate it. I just wanted to get pictures that looked like they were in the spirit of Constable. And they do have that painterly feeling. The nice thing about things now, by the way, is that I'm using a digital camera which can record events in 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. Before, with long 5-hour exposures, any clouds, any activity above never showed up. So now I'm actually able to get a moment in light, a moment where the tree, it was actually getting light from the left. This is in Hampstead Heath, near the swimming hole that apparently we have somebody here who used to swim in it, right? Yeah, you did. But there are 3 swimming holes. There's guys, gals, and then mixed. I don't know which one this is. But I was looking at a beautiful pond. Again, and so all the stuff on the ground begins to participate with the visuals. And what you get is something quite thick and dense and extraordinary. This is in Flatford. It's east of London, and it's where Constable spent a lot of time. He didn't travel much. I don't think he went outside of England ever. But he painted a lot in Flatford, and this is us in Flatford with nice clouds. I mean, it felt like Constable, really prayed for us. There's that, and there's this. Cows would occasionally come to us, and we'd have to get them out. The farmer who owned this land was having a difficulty with us being there for some reason. What the hell are you doing, So, but it felt like I was paying attention to the work of somebody who had stood there 150 years ago. This is a view of the famous Constable painting. I mean, it's supposed to be Britain's most favorite painting. They took a survey. And it's the hay-wain, and it's a wagon in the river taking some hay to the end there. This is the painting, and we were sort of concentrated on the left part of that painting, and this is my picture. So it becomes like a replica of a replica but at least with the spirit of, I love the way that water shimmers like in a painting. It's also nice to be outside where somebody has done something, plein air, you know. Painters painted in their studios a lot, and they never stopped going to the studio, but they went outside. And such a pleasure to say, oh, I want to paint this, but that light looks pretty interesting. So a new painting came about. This is a sketch of a device that was used pre-photographically, before the invention of photography. Apparently, a lot of artists had such devices, these travel tents, where a periscope would throw the landscape onto the artist's piece of paper. It was a neat way of, you know, being right with what was happening. So my version becomes a little bit of that. This is the sketch of it, but essentially it's about 5.5 feet tall, portable. What is not shown here is that the camera is tethered to a laptop, which is, first of all, we're not dying of heat inside the tent, but the laptop shows us focus, shows us details. It was a way to make the picture, and that's really helpful. Also, extremely high-end technology with my camera and extremely old-fashioned looking stuff. I like that combination. It's a little satanic looking. People in France were like, are you a sect? One of the nice things about photographing in France is that in the mid-19th century, many painters decided to go outside and paint in plein air. But in 1839, photography was invented. So at one point in the fields of France, there would be photographers and painters working side by side. I don't know if they threw rocks at each other, but that mixture of mediums, you know, must have been quite interesting. Like this wonderful negative of a field in France, and I cannot read his. Anyway, so this is a picture made in the 1850s by one of such a photographer. This is my picture in that area, where the ground now feels like it's a component, a painterly component of the picture. And because focus plays a role in photography, I can make the tree out of focus as well. So that sense of abstraction and light and all that, it's a hybrid of a photograph and a painting at the end of the day. And this is in Arles, where Van Gogh painted a lot, but a beautiful parched earth can give you a sense of the surface of a crackling painting or something. This is an olive field grove next to where Van Gogh was. He committed himself to this sanitarium because he knew he was in trouble. And the guy who ran the sanitarium knew enough that he said to Van Gogh, oh yeah, well you can sleep here, but you can go out and paint, which some of the most remarkable Van Goghs we have are from those permissions to go outside. Next to the sanatorium was a lot of olive trees. So this is sort of my version of, what he would have done. So you see a lot of grass in the sky, and there's a certain kind of intrusion there. Oh, the grass coming in, playing with the branches. A sunset. This is not me, this is Dominique, who I love because he was painting around that area in ponds and lakes. In fact, he had his own boat that he turned into a studio, so he would go out in the water and paint from his boat. So he made these glorious paintings that had a kind of a watery feel to it. Corot also, artists who I've begun to love a lot. These are revolutionary paintings when plein air became a way of making pictures. And of course, it's a painting not necessarily about Jesus suffering, you know, which history paintings were no longer part of the deal. Nice light on a tree, hey, that's enough. This is my picture of a path. And this is my Corot. I'm in this sunflower field in the distance. I got to Monet's garden. I've been there 2 or 3 times, and we got permission from the people in charge that we could work in the gardens after the tourists left. With tourists, there's no way to make work there. So after 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, Max, another assistant, and me had access to the gardens for ourselves. It was this incredible moment. And very quiet, and the birds, and for a second you feel like Monet, you know, when he built that garden so he could paint. And one of the ironies of this whole thing is that at one point when he was painting such gorgeous pictures, World War I was a few miles away. Very weird moment in French history where near the coast there's fighting and he's painting away. This is another one where the water itself, the pebbles on the paths have become, you know, part of the event in the picture. This is early morning in the garden. And by the way, I'm not interested in making a Monet. I mean, it would be so stupid. Because, first of all, I cannot compete with such a great painter. But that's not the point. The point is to say, I want to drink from the same water that he did. You know, I want to be able to be activated by the work of an earlier artist and find my own ways into the landscape. This is in the garden where the pebbles underneath. I mean, one of the things I do when I photograph like this, I walk around, I'm looking at the ground, not the tree. Good ground. And in this case, you know, it was what came out of it looks like a Seurat painting, that sense of breaking the landscape into dots. But it's quite natural. It's no Photoshop saying, like I said, let's put the Monet filter on. This is real. And in fact, pointillism in some ways is quite real there. It's what's happening. So the idea of something being broken up that way is part of the optical parts of these pictures. This is, and I've tried different things, like in this case, bring the camera, the tent, very close to flowers, to the point where the flowers are quite out of focus, optically. What's nice about this picture, I think, is the out of focusness blurs, but then the ground itself has real flowers that are sharp. So this syntax of sharpness and blurriness, creating, it's not a Jackson Pollock, but it feels like a modern rendition of a Monet. And this feels like a painting from the 1850s to me. This is the River Ebt, where next to the garden, apparently but Monet took liberties in making this river flow into his gardens. He probably had a good lawyer about this, but he made his water gardens out of this river. The apple tree with the flowers on the ground itself. What I said before, great early French photography was happening around the same time that painters were making pictures of. This incredible photograph by Cuvelier in Fontainebleau, and Gustave Legray was also making pictures there. Gorgeous, gorgeous early pictures. Again, while painters were happening, this incredible picture that Legray did in 1852, right? Guess what? Monet came in 1865. Made the same painting, So in some ways, one could say photographers were shaping the direction that certain painters took. I wonder if they talked. The idea of especially continuity, going forward with changes, but based on influences and the past, is really found in this triptych I'm going to show you. This beautiful Constable painting of an elm, just a glorious, glorious painting. 1824. Lucian Freud, right? Not a dull historian. The opposite, in fact. Makes a beautiful thing out of that elm. And I, not wanting to be left out, Bowdoin College, my alma mater, I wanted to donate a picture to them to sell for scholarships. But I made my own tent picture in the Bowdoin Pines. And it is nice to see an arc of influence, tradition, and also you can just make a picture of a tree, right? It doesn't have to be the end of the world in front of you. Don't tell Lisa that. In fact, I have been dating photography for a long time. Some of my earlier work at the Philadelphia Art Museum, I made a camera obscura, and I wanted the Chirico in the picture. I specifically wanted the Chirico there. Some curators had an issue with that. But the sense of contributing to my optical weirdness with painting, it's been going on forever. This is at Yale, Pam, who's here. I think she was there when I was making these pictures. I had the feeling of being a curator. Why not take a Nadelman bust and put it in front of a Hopper? I mean, it's unheard of. You do not want to do this all the time. But, and everybody around me is going, But the idea of mixing and matching and the idea of painting, having some kind of conversation with things, it's been part of my interest for a long time. It continues. In fact, I began to actually make, not paintings, but I started photographing paint. There's a distinction there. Small one, but still there. For putting paint down and photographing it in the most realistic way I can. So this is a kind of a weird landscape made out of paint. Black paint. Several exposures of me fooling around with on glass. So I'm going to end with my latest picture making. I thought about, well, the idea of interiors and how the history of art has such wonderful interiors. The ones that I gravitate towards are the ones that have a strangeness or an angst. You know something is going on in this room, but you don't know what it is, like the Dylan song. So these are some of the influences. I have a lot of books. Someone I recently discovered, Peter de Hooch, who was like a Vermeer as well. And then these sense of interiors. Contemporary work, like Peter Haley. Scandinavian Danish painter who I recently discovered. And you know this guy. In fact, there was a glorious show of Munch's work here that was out of this world. But Munch is nothing but angst. But my point is that an interior could accommodate the feeling of angst or supernaturalness or drama. Another Danish painter. Even the Luke Tuman's bizarre paintings, there's something strangely familiar about that room. And Becky Sue's, this is the opposite of Munch. But almost the precision of it is almost eerie. And Cecile Brown's, she's not the most minimal painter we know. And that's why we like her. But the room and the mess it makes becomes part of the patina of memory. So these are some pictures I've been making. I've made 3 or 4 pictures involving interiors. Devising an interior that has some sense of psychology. Miniatures. And this one, in particular, this last one, made me think about, is it possible that in my soul, something activated to say, tell Abe this is something to think about. And it has to do with the idea of home and a road taking you out of it. Which sounds like a heavy-duty thing, but in fact, it's related to how I've been making work for a long time. Finding a road that ends somewhere and it takes you unexpectedly to something new, which is what this road was in France. And I want to end, I hate to be academic about this, but there's a Rilke thing that I wanted to read to you, and I'm a terrible reader, so forgive me. whoever you are in the evening, step out of your room where you know everything yours in the last house before the far off, whoever you are, with your eyes which in their weariness barely free themselves from the worn out threshold, you lift very slowly one black tree and place it against the sky, slender, alone, and you have made the world. And it is huge and like a word which grows ripe in silence. And as your will ceases on its meaning, tenderly your eyes let it go. This picture is functioning now for me at this stage of my life, at my age, on pure id. I'm letting the ghosts, the memories, contribute to pictures. Second picture, third picture, which lead to that. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. I would love, if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. I don't know, if I can. No f-stop questions. Yes?
Would you take multiple pictures, say, of this with different ground?
Would I?
Yeah, would you do that ground and then maybe move the tent a little further to a different place of another piece of ground?
Well, we did that from the beginning, far away, to the middle, to the end. So as we moved onto that road, the combination of ground and view changed. Yeah. Somebody back there?
I had a question about the printmaking itself. The prints, do you do the prints? Those large prints? Who does that?
Well, Max. And if you take him away, I'm going to kill you. No, Max is a gifted printer. And in the studio, we can print up to 30 by 40 inches, which is neat because we can say darker, lighter. Some of the larger prints in the show they're much larger, so we take them somewhere else in Massachusetts, but under our guide. But yeah, I mean, printmaking with digital technology has transformed the way photography looks now. I mean, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, digital prints looked like shit. They did. Blurry and pixelated. The changes have been enormous. And my camera also has a very high end. It's 150 megapixels. I know this is techie, but they're probably going to go to 150 megapixels. So the description of the world is getting further and further refined, whereas it feels tactile, you know. So, anybody? Yes.
First, Abe, thank you for taking us all on your journey.
Oh, thank you.
Understand more what your journey is like. I'm wondering why you choose these artists as your muse, and what surprising things have you learned from that process?
Well, there are only so many artists I could choose. But Munch is a guy I like a lot, and I would love to go to Norway to make work there because his landscapes have that kind of psychological density that I like. So definitely Monet and Constable already have that kind of quality. Like Mondrian, it's hard to do. I mean, you know, I love him, but it's not like I'm gonna go to, you know, the Netherlands and do some drawings. So people who affect me emotionally, and also who are amazingly radical paintings. I mean, when you think Monet now is in coffee mugs, you know, and you forget that when he was making work, especially near the end of his life, he was making radical paintings that people were like, what's going on here? Anyway, he had a radical nature to him that people forget because of the commerce and all that. So I like to choose people that transformed landscapes, especially for this work. Just say it.
Do you ever prepare the ground that will be superimposed on?
Do I ever prepare the ground? I have, bulldozers. The French didn't like that. No, typically no, although I've been known to take a twig and toss it in. But generally, it's what's there. And that's part of the attraction, and I love the philosophical idea that this ground is looking at that tree. How nice. It's not invented, it's their neighbors. So no, I don't, although I have made pictures where I've put pieces of wood on the ground. So the grain of the wood becomes part of the pattern. Take out a soda can. Yes, or a Perrier bottle. Anybody else? Yes?
Did you ever go to Cuba or want to go back to Cuba?
I have been back to Cuba twice. Is it twice, Lisa? Yeah, twice. And I've made some camera obscura pictures there. Yeah, I have. I don't know if that answers it, but yeah. You want to know what it felt like? I have a very uneasy relationship with Cuba. First of all, we had to flee it because they were going to kill my father, so not a good place. I'm also not enamored with the way socialism or communism has made the island piece of shit. So I have problems with the government, and my family is suffering as a consequence. So I've gone back as my own, see my town, but in some ways I don't want to contribute a single dime anymore to the oppression of my people. So, anybody else? Yes. I'm sorry? Well, after Princeton and Yale and Williams. No, I mean, I came not speaking English in New York City, and so I struggled. And I went to a high school that I was doing somewhat well at, not academically well, but doing okay. Bowdoin sent one of those scouts in 1966 when Bowdoin was looking for people who were not from, a certain part. So they said, you should apply, and I went, and it was difficult because I was not academically prepared. I didn't have the history of how to work in that setting. But I took a photography course, 1969, and it's clearly the first few pictures. It was like, okay, I can talk, and it was clearly I can talk, and I can choose this moment and say it's mine. So that sense of ownership of a vision or a feeling became super important for me. So Bowdoin made it happen. So, anybody else? If you have a question, just ask.
Have you been tempted to shoot motion or video?
Video? No, photographers are terrible at video because they stand, they do 20 minutes or something. I love movies, but I'm afraid I wouldn't be any good. It's its own craft that people like my daughter do it better. What? Yes?
In the photographs you took of yourself shooting in the camera in the tent, it looks as though you have different versions of the tent. Some are white, some are black. Could you talk a little bit about the evolution of
Yeah, yeah.
your own tent technology?
Well, different sponsors. I had to, some of them would say, no, no more. Well, the first tents were tents that are made for refugees, and I adopted it to my ways, but it had a lot of leaks. So over time, I kept improving on them, leaving them I left one in Paris because it was no good. I left one in Italy too, I think. So they ended up in the garbage. As I began to talk to scientists and optical people, they said, if you do this and that and build a plate, then you can put. Anyway, I got to talk to scientists and makers, fabricators, who really helped me a lot. And the always was very hard. This tent that when it blew away, it almost killed a child on a bicycle. Yeah, it was, yeah. This one is doable, so I don't see that many new improvements, but we'll see. Yes?
Abe, all of your photographs are so compositionally powerful. You select for the composition, you leave one here, which is pertinent to talk about because the negative shapes in the trees are so beautifully constructed. Do you look at the composition or do you look at the nature itself, or is it a combination of both?
Yes, that's the answer. No, you're a gifted painter, and oftentimes we don't, it's in our body, you know that the left has to have that. So it's very instinctual. So, one more question and then we have to go.
I have a question about the interior pictures.
About the what?
The interior
Yes.
pictures. So the tent, obviously, you're outside and with the ground is what you have to deal with. But in the interior, you have a choice, right, of different textures, walls. Conceivably, you could do the ceiling with peeling paint.
Yes.
And all of those types of things. Is that something that that is freeing, or does it distract you from what you're trying to do?
It's making it difficult for me, and I tend to want to do something that I'm not quite at ease with. So, and I could do 10 pictures now, camera obscuras, I could do flowers. So this new project involves getting to be good at architecture, painting, sculpture. It's irritating, but I like going at it with some hesitations, but maybe in the hopes of finding something new. So I hope. Thank you.